Hey everyone, welcome back to Brownlow Books. I have a review for you. You know, it's Monday. Um, so I just recently read, well, glare, Ducks by Kate Beaton. Originally this wasn't on my radar, even though, you know, it's a Canadian. I should say the full title, Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands. We'll get there. Originally not on my radar. I saw it in a bookstore when I was in there, and I was like, oh, what a big honking book. Like, I don't need 400 odd pages of someone telling me how great the oil sands are. Like, that's not a fucking thing. It's not a thing. So, it wasn't on my radar, and then it was on the Goodreads People's Choice Awards, and I was like, or Reader's Choice Awards, and I was like, okay, well, it's Canadian, and it's a graphic novel, maybe. And so I went to my my library's app to see if they had it as an ebook, and they didn't. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna hit suggest and see what happens, because most of the time I suggest something and nothing happens. I suggested it this time, and about 2 weeks later, I got a notification saying my holder's ready. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm reading this now. Okay. And yeah, it's definitely not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be like, okay, I went to the oil sands and here was my life, blah, 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 whatever. Like, you know, like, it's Canada. You probably know someone who's gone to Alberta to try to work in the oil sands. It's just kind of how it is. So, yeah, I read it. And, it is a graphic memoir in that it is both a graphic novel and kind of graphic. There is no sugarcoating in this. There is no sugarcoating. No sugarcoating. It tells you what's up. It's a little tedious at times. Kate works in what's it called? Like an equipment, basically a tool shed, right? You know, what do the guys need? Oh, here it is, you know? And then she works in an office as like an administrator for a little while. So like there are some tedious bits to it because those are tedious jobs. But it's more like what happens outside of that. I want to say as a whole, it's kind of about trauma. Her own personal trauma juxtaposed over the environmental trauma that oil sands cause. So it's kind of like a personal versus environment kind of thing, and they both fucking suck. So I should warn you, going forward, there will be spoilers in here. Yeah. So it's what? So the whole kind of area is kind of like a moral gray zone. Like there's all these men being kind of horrible and misogynistic, and like they come into the equipment shed just to kind of leer at her and say crude things, and like she gets raped twice. And like, so it's just sort of, it's just sort of like a moral gray zone of like, well, you know, would these guys behave like this at home? Is this because we're isolated and people are lonely and like there's so many mental health issues here and substance abuse issues? And it's just kind of like, she's from Cape Breton and she meets other people from Cape Breton and then she starts like hearing horrible things, and it's just kind of like, well, you know, would they be this horrible to women at home, or is this just like because I'm like 1 out of like 99, you know? Like there's so few women up there. So there's kind of some exploration of that. There's also, like I said, the environmental one. So Ducks, the title, is because in 2004, 5, a huge flock of this endangered duck ended up in tailing ponds, and they all died. I remember reading this in the news because I was in university at the time myself, and so it was this like big thing of like, oh my god, like these ponds are supposed to be safe, like what's happening, you know? And so it became this big old thing of like how it's poisoning the earth and it's poisoned all these ducks, and there's like neighboring First Nations who can't drink their water and like all of that kind of thing. And so it's again like these men and their morally gray zone of like, would they behave like that? And then this like corporate accountability that doesn't exist, and they're just like, whoops, and it's just like, oh, okay, like, sure. Because, you know, they're also in this like moral gray zone that like every fucking large corporation in the world who's damaging the earth is fucking in, right? So it's a lot, and there are really funny moments, there are, where you're just kind of, or like beautiful moments, or hearts, like parts that like rip your heart out, and you're just like, okay. So like, it's absolutely worth a read if you can handle that kind of stuff. Don't force it on yourself if you can't. You know, I feel like I don't read a lot of memoirs from Canadians that often. It's just, but yeah, like I said, oil sands, I was like, nah, get the fuck out of here with that shit. And then I was like, oh, that's not what you're doing here. And I really liked it. It's a horrible thing to say and also a fine thing to say. But, yeah, it's just, it feels really real and a little raw, but like ever so slightly polished. If that makes sense. You know, it's a rough stone that's been tumbled in the ocean. It's just kind of, here's some truth, but I've taken off a few of the sharp edges, and some are still kind of jagged. Like, you know? Yeah, it was a surprise delight for me. It really was. Like, I didn't expect to feel shit reading this, and then I was like, oh, this is what this book is going to be about, and there it was. So, on Goodreads, it has 3,359 reviews. It has 4.54 stars. And it also falls into the graphic novels that I have read that don't have a lot of color. Because apparently I get made fun of for that the books I read don't have color, because I read Paper Girls and I was like, wow, this is a brightly colored book. And everyone's like, what? And I was like, I don't know, most of mine are usually done in grayscale. So it is color, but it's like black, gray, blue kind of thing, if that's a thing that bothers you for some reason. Anyways, so that's where it is. It's absolutely worth a read. If you read it, make sure to read the acknowledgements, because the acknowledgements are not just acknowledgements. They're almost like, it's almost like that thing I love where you're like, you think this is the story, and then you get like that last page or two that something happens, and you're just like, changes the entire tone of the book. It kind of feels like that reading the acknowledgements, where there's a thing in there that just makes you go, that. Wow, I'm tearing up. Okay. Do that girl thing, right? So I think it's absolutely worth a read. I think it has the potential. I feel like I've never seen a personal memoir coming out of the oil sands before. Like, I don't think I've ever read anything about anyone living in Fort Mac. Which is kind of crazy on its own right, since so many Canadians do end up there, you know, trying to make money, pay off whatever, you know, the money's good, etc. Like, I know people that went there. They failed miserably. They're bad people. It's fine. But like in 2015, I think it was, and they had the big wildfire that like wiped out most of the town. Like there was like a mass exodus of people back to wherever they're from in Canada, right? And, you know, I remember that time very specifically because I was working at the post office at the time. And Canada Post offered free mail forwarding for anyone from Fort Mac to wherever they had ended up, well, the town rebuilt kind of thing, like 4 months of it, I think it was. And so I processed quite a few, which surprised me because, like, I live in the Greater Toronto area. Like, there's no lack of work here. Like, because you always kind of hear, like, for example, Kate Beaton of the Cape Breton Beatons. Like, that's what she said. Like, it's, you know, it's a lot of out east. It's like, there's no jobs here. There's no work. There's nothing that pays good. So you know, end up out there. And that's exactly why she was there. She's trying to pay off her student loans after she graduated from university. And so, yeah, when I had some coming back here, I was just like, the fuck? Like, I did not think it was, like, from this area, but people are literally from everywhere up there. So it's really interesting to see, like, how people are the same regardless. That was a little thing I enjoyed. But, yeah. There's no sugarcoating. It is head on that trauma. So, yes, I highly recommend. I'm kind of wondering if I want to buy it since I read it as an ebook. But can't just be buying books that I'm not going to read again, probably, right? I don't know. All right. I don't need to ramble on any longer. Thanks for hanging out. What's like, subscribe, share. I'll see you around next time.